Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling a very practical, very real financial question. Exactly how much cold hard cash do you need holding in your hands to buy a $600,000 home in Canada right now? If you've ever wondered what the actual upfront math looks like, beyond just the sticker price, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to start with the reality of a $600K home. Unpack those down payment tiers, reveal the hidden closing costs, and then finally, calculate your total cash needed, step by step.
Starting off with Section 1, the $600,000 home reality.
So, think you only need a flat 5% down? Honestly, this is probably the single most common misconception out there in Canadian real estate. People just naturally assume there's this flat percentage applied right across the board, no matter what the purchase price is. But relying on that flat 5% myth, yeah, that can leave you severely short on cash when closing day actually rolls around. We're anchoring our whole breakdown today on one very specific target price, $600,000. Why? Because in Canada, this exact number is incredibly important. It actually triggers some unique mortgage rules. It's not just a random benchmark. Crossing that $500,000 mark fundamentally changes how your down payment is calculated. So let's look at exactly how that math works.
Moving to Section 2, unpacking those down payment tiers. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the tiered system functions. In Canada, the system literally works in tiers. For the first $500,000 of the home's value, you pay 5%. That comes out to $25,000. But because our home is over that $500,000 mark, a totally new tier kicks in. For that remaining $100,000, you actually have to pay a full 10%, which adds another $10,000 to your upfront bill. So the absolutely crucial point here is that when you combine those two tiers together, the $25,000 and the $10,000, your minimum down payment comes out to exactly $35,000. That's the first major line item on our receipt today. It is not $30,000, which is what that flat 5% myth would have you believe. It's exactly $35,000.
All right. Section 3, revealing hidden closing costs. Because, unfortunately, the down payment isn't the end of the story.
But wait, there's more. I know, it sounds kind of like a late-night infomercial, but when it comes to buying property, it is the absolute truth. You're going to need significantly more cash than just your down payment to actually get those keys handed to you.
You have to account for closing costs. Basically, these are additional funds entirely separate from your down payment that are legally required to officially close the deal. These are absolutely not optional fees. We're talking about a whole bucket of expenses that includes things like your land transfer tax, your legal fees, and title insurance. You literally cannot buy a house without paying them.
So, how much should you prepare for? Well, as a general rule of thumb, you need to set aside an extra 1.5% to 2% of the total purchase price just to cover these closing costs. Honestly, budgeting this way is the best strategy to ensure you aren't suddenly scrambling for cash at the 11th hour.
Let's break down exactly what that looks like. The absolute biggest chunk here is usually the land transfer tax, listed here at approximately $8,475. Now keep in mind, this specific tax varies widely depending on your region, but it's always going to be a massive part of your costs. Right alongside that, you've got legal fees running roughly $1,500 to $2,000, plus your title insurance.
So wrapping up these hidden fees, if you're buying a $600,000 home, you need to budget roughly $10,000 to $12,000 just for closing costs. And remember, this isn't money you can just roll into your mortgage. This has to be liquid cash sitting right there in your bank account, ready to go, just for the privilege of finalizing the transaction. Which brings us to Section 4, your total cash needed. Let's see how this all builds. Here, we're visually stacking your $35,000 tiered down payment right alongside an average of $11,000 in closing costs. Think of this as your final receipt at the checkout counter. It's two separate buckets of money, but both are equally required to actually buy the home.
So let's add it all up. $35,000 for the down payment, plus about $11,000 for closing costs. That means you need roughly $46,000 in total funds to close the deal. That is your definitive bottom line. You don't need $30,000. You need $46,000 in cold, hard, liquid cash to secure a $600,000 home in Canada.
Now, having $46,000 up front gets you the keys, but what actually happens the month after you move in?
You see this question asking if you want your specific monthly payments, but you know what? Let's skip the DMs and just reveal the final piece of the puzzle right now. Because you're putting down less than 20%, you're going to be hit with a CMHC insurance premium of exactly $35,000, which actually gets tacked directly onto your mortgage. Factoring that premium in at a 3.75% interest rate, your ongoing monthly payment is going to sit right around $2,717. So you might have the upfront cash figured out, but how does that monthly reality actually fit into your budget? Definitely something to think about.